Coming up on Arirang News, African swine fever continues to spread in South Korea. A 9th case confirmed today as bans remain in effect on the movement of livestock. In a summit meeting, South Korea and Bulgaria agreed to boost their ties in nuclear energy and ICT. The Bulgarian Prime Minister reaffirms his support for President Moon's push for peace on the peninsula. And Korea's terms of trade down again in August, meaning it gets less in terms of imports for the items it ships out. To blame are weaker shipments of computers and electronics. It's 4:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for tuning in to our afternoon newscast. I'm Devin Whiting. South Korea has confirmed a 9th case of African swine fever. Humans are safe, but the disease is fatal to pigs, and so the government's stepping up its quarantine efforts, which include putting down tens of thousands of pigs. Here's the official announcement this morning. Take a listen.
9 cases have been confirmed so far. 5 out of the 9 confirmed cases originated in Ganghwa County. A total of 62,000 pigs are subject to culling, and around 29,000 pigs have been culled so far.
A few suspected cases turned out negative, 2 in Yangju, a city close to Seoul, and another in Yeoncheon. All the confirmed cases are fairly close to North Korea, such as the northern areas of Gyeonggi-do province and Incheon. The government has banned all vehicles in the livestock industry in northern Gyeonggi-do from leaving the area. The authorities are currently working to find out exactly how the disease got into South Korea. Anticipation has been growing for the U.S. and North Korea to resume their nuclear talks, but the U.S. says it has not been able to set a schedule yet. A North Korean diplomat, meanwhile, saying he hopes for a wise decision from President Trump. Oh Jang-hee reports.
Working-level denuclearization talks between North Korea and the U.S. are not likely to happen in late September after all. Speaking at a press conference in New York on Thursday on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Washington was not able to arrange the schedule for a meeting this month. But he stressed Washington is ready to meet North Korea and believes it is important to do so. After months of deadlock, the North's Vice Foreign Minister Choi Sun-hee said in a statement early this month that North Korea was willing to meet with U.S. officials in late September. As the U.S. also hinted of taking a new method in its negotiations with the North, working-level talks were highly expected to take place. But the delay, a North Korea expert says, comes as the two sides have not been able to narrow their differences.
From North Korea's point of view, that it's not in their interest to initiate or resume the working-level talks with the United States when they believe that it's unlikely the U.S. government is going to change its position toward North Korea.
And the expert's point was backed up by what North Korea had to say in another statement released on Friday. Kim Gae-kwan, an advisor to Pyongyang's foreign ministry, said the U.S. has done nothing to implement its promises made at their previous summits, and therefore the prospects for a third Kim-Trump summit are dim. He stressed that having another summit wouldn't help efforts for a breakthrough because there are still views in Washington that the North has to denuclearize before any sanctions relief or economic concessions can be provided to the regime. The North Korean diplomat called for a, quote, wise and bold decision from President Trump. Oh Jang-hee, Arirang News.
Speaking at the UN this week, South Korean President Moon Jae-in refrained from criticizing Japan directly for its trade restrictions on South Korea. But Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe did not hold back. Lee Ji-won reports.
Japan's efforts to blame South Korea for their current disputes continued even at the UN General Assembly in New York. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe took every opportunity to criticize Seoul for their frosty ties, including at a press conference he held on Wednesday. When asked on the worsening Seoul-Tokyo ties, the Japanese PM went on for nearly 3 minutes to explain Tokyo's stance on almost every single point of contention.
South Korea isn't making any moves on its violation of the 1965 Seoul-Tokyo Agreement, and is continuing to take actions that harm the trust between the two sides.
Abe reiterated that the forced labor ruling, where Seoul's Supreme Court ordered Japanese firms to compensate Koreans forced to work for them during Japan's colonial rule, has nothing to do with its trade curbs on Seoul. He then explained how its trade restrictions perfectly follow the orders of free trade and the World Trade Organization, adding that when safety and security are proven, exports are given the green light and that such measures do not affect trade with other countries. Japan imposed trade restrictions on Korea in July and August, initially citing broken down trust between the two sides, but later changing the explanation to unspecified security reasons. The Japanese Prime Minister also expressed regret over Seoul's decision to end its military information sharing pact with Japan, saying that their worsening ties should not affect security interests. Abe is also reported to have reiterated these stances at his bilateral summit with U.S. President Trump.
There are criticisms from within Japan that Tokyo isn't doing enough to respond against South Korea's promotion of its own stance to the international community. Also, these claims could be seen as part of Japan's efforts to win against Seoul should the WTO rule on this.
Now, while Abe was trying to rally world opinion against Seoul, the top diplomats of both sides met on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly on Thursday. Foreign Minister Kang Ganghwa met with her newly appointed counterpart Toshimitsu Motegi for the first time, and the two talked for around 50 minutes. While no real progress was made on the major issues, Minister Kang told reporters that both sides agreed close cooperation is needed on issues like North Korea's denuclearization, and that the two sides should continue such open-minded talks and work towards the future. 이지원, Arirang News.
Japan's new defense white paper has again wrongly labeled South Korea's easternmost islands of Dokdo as Japanese territory for the 15th consecutive year. The document adopted Friday also mentions for the first time the possibility of dispatching fighter jets to the airspace above Dokdo in case of a conflict. In response, Seoul's foreign ministry strongly protested Tokyo's wrongful claim, urging Japan to acknowledge that this does nothing at all to help the two countries' relationship. Earlier this afternoon, the foreign ministry summoned a senior diplomat from the Japanese embassy in Seoul to lodge a formal protest. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff also summoned the Japanese military attaché this afternoon. North Korea has been identified as one of the countries that uses online propaganda to manipulate foreign elections. This is according to a report by researchers at Oxford University who analyzed social media manipulation by the governments and political parties of 70 countries. North Korea was categorized as low capacity, meaning its cyber troops, so-called, work only from within the country and only during elections. It says the team is run directly by the regime and consists of roughly 200 individuals using hacked or stolen accounts to spread disinformation to support or oppose foreign governments. As for South Korea, the report classified it as having minimal cyber troops with an even lower capacity than the North. The highest capacities belong to China, Russia, and the U.S. France is mourning its former president, Jacques Chirac, who died Thursday at the age of 86. He led France for 12 years as a charismatic standard-bearer of the right, famously opposing the Iraq War and advocating European unity. In a televised speech, French President Emmanuel Macron described him as a great Frenchman. Our Daejeon has more.
Jacques Chirac died at the age of 86 on Thursday after serving France as president from 1995 to 2007. He also served as prime minister on 2 occasions and was the mayor of Paris for nearly 2 decades. Chirac drew both domestic and international acclaim for his strong opposition to French involvement in the Iraq War. At the time, he said, "War is always a last resort. It is always proof of failure." He was also the first French leader to acknowledge France's role in the Holocaust. While in office, he pressed for a more federal Europe within the European Union, opened up the United Europe of States. And as a counterweight to the U.S. global dominance, Chirac also supported the United Nations and multipolarism. Despite an embezzlement conviction after his presidency, Chirac remained popular, and France will hold a national day of mourning on Monday. 최시영, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in held a summit today with the Prime Minister of Bulgaria, Boyko Borisov. They agreed to boost their bilateral partnerships in the fields of nuclear energy and ICT.
양국은 교육, 투자, 에너지, 방산 분야에서 실질 협력을 확대해 나갈 잠재력이 큽니다. 양국이 그 잠재력을 함께 실현해 나가길 바랍니다.
President Moon noted that Bulgaria wants to introduce nuclear reactors and upgrade its weapons systems, saying South Korea, with its expertise, would be the optimal partner. Prime Minister Borisov reaffirmed his support for the peace process on the Korean peninsula. South Korea's terms of trade got worse in August for the 21st month in a row, due in particular to weaker shipments of computers and electronics. According to the Bank of Korea, the net barter terms of trade index in August was 90.62, down more than 4% on year. Terms of trade measures the amount of imports a country can buy for each unit of exports. In the same period, South Korea's export volume index was down nearly 6%. It's time now for an in-depth look at the market action on this Friday, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Kim Se-won, professor of economics at Ewha Women's University. Dr. Kim, thank you for coming on today.
Good afternoon.
Well, here domestically, we've got the outbreak of African swine fever. There are more cases popping up every day. How does this affect the economy for ordinary people, and what do you think the authorities are doing will be effective?
Well, these days, the inflation is almost 0% from the beginning of the year. But the possibility that price of the pork is skyrocketing for shortages is a big concern right now, because pork is one of the most important food reserves in South Korea. So if we take a look at the case of the China last year under the African swine fever, the pork price skyrocketed by 40% in China. So this can hurt the consumer sentiment in a negative way. That decreases already worsened domestic consumption. So I believe that it would be great if government provides enough pork from importing pork from foreign countries.
To keep the prices down, yeah. I mean, in China,
Right.
1/3 of the pigs were wiped out, reports say. Well, now,
Right.
in the U.S., we saw the start of an impeachment inquiry this week into President Trump. What impact does this have on the American economy and the markets?
Potential impeachment investigation into Mr. Trump increases uncertainties in the future. So we know that uncertainty is a bad news to stock market by increasing volatilities, like ups and downs of the market. So in today's situation, both of New York and Seoul markets opened lower after the possibility of impeachment of U.S. president. So in the long run, I think at least by the end of the year, along with U.S.-China trade war, the impeachment possibility will be another burden to global stock market.
Yeah, as you referenced, I mean, there's no way that this impeachment story does not affect the trade talks with China. There'll be a calculation there. They're supposed to restart their trades in a couple of weeks. What do you think is going to happen there?
So far, actually, it has been highly expected that it would be extremely difficult to reach agreement between the two countries, because the way of thinking is different between the two sides. For example, U.S. Pushes China to enforce the U.S. requirement by making new law in China. But on the other side, Chinese government considers this is something like interference of domestic affairs, not acceptable. But facing new situation of impeachment of Mr. Trump, I think the possibility of U.S. Government to make a certain level of concession to the demand of Beijing.
So this does weaken the Trump side.
Right.
Got it. Well, at the UN this week, President Trump, speaking of another trade deal, signed one with Prime Minister Abe of Japan, and that'll see Japan importing more American farm goods, meat, wine, cheese, so on. What does this mean for their respective economies and the world?
Broadly speaking, I believe it is a good news to global economy, because two countries lessened the tariffs and at the same time intensified the market opening. But it should be noted that Abe administration opened Japan's $7 billion size agricultural market for avoiding tariffs on Japan's automobile export to United States. So I believe, technically speaking, it is a swapping between automobile export and agricultural import from United States.
Yeah, speaking of what Japan gets out of this deal, they'll be able to ship America more manufactured products. You referenced cars. Japan is, of course, a competitor of Korea's in the American market, so it'll feel some effect. When it comes to cars and other goods, what should Korea be doing to respond?
I believe that Mr. Trump's administration will demand almost the same deal to the Korean government. So by opening Korean agricultural market more, they will delay, for example, tariffs on Korean automobile export to the United States. So if Korean government accepts this deal, there will be a difficult political instability because agriculture is emotionally very important part of the Korean people and politics.
All right, Dr. Kim, always a pleasure. That's where we'll have to leave it today. Thanks for your insights.
Thank you very much.
Now, the city of Daejeon in central South Korea has been chosen to host a global forum for aspiring young scientists and engineers. That's the Expo-Sciences International, which will open in 2023. The city, along with the Daejeon International Marketing Enterprise and the Korea Science and Engineering Fair, announced on Friday that it had won the competition to host it. Around 2,000 young people from all over the world will gather to exchange cultural and scientific knowledge and ideas. It'll be the first time that Expo-Sciences International will be held in East Asia. Daejeon's bid was helped by its successful hosting last year of the Asian regional version. South Korea's cosmetics and skincare regimes have become so popular that the industry and its products are commonly called K-beauty. The latest trend, as our Hong Yu reports, is the use of professional-grade beauty devices at home.
When people think of skin and body care, they used to think of going to dermatologists or beauty salons. But these days, customers have turned to devices that can be used wherever and whenever they please. And one such device that is trending in Seoul is the LED face mask. They are electronic devices that have LED lights on the interior of a mask that is as thick as a helmet. And what is special about this mask is that these LED lights are like those used in dermatology clinics. So there are people who prefer to buy the LED face masks and use them repetitively instead of going to the dermatology clinic where they would have to pay much more for a one-time only treatment.
The wavelengths produced from these LED lights were specifically calculated to affect skin cells in the most effective way. And to make it more convenient to use at home, wireless charging functions, touchpads, and a mobile control system have been developed.
There are so many care devices, ranging from dead skin cell peeling devices to body massage devices. Dead cell peeling is also one of the treatments that is provided at clinics, but this device uses low-stimulus ultrasonic waves and negative ions for the same purpose of removing dead cells. There are also small facial massage devices that use mini LED lights, vibrations, and negative ions to shrink a swollen face and to revitalize scalps and hair.
Our main customers are from ages 20 to 40. Young people prefer light items, and highly priced items are purchased mostly by older people.
The market is worth more than $400 million, and it is expected to grow to more than $800 million. The home care market is continuously developing as there are more consumers turning to immediate treatments that can be done at home. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
There's no cure for Alzheimer's disease, but to treat its symptom, it's important to diagnose it early, which has been hard to do. A group of Korean scientists have developed a new test using bodily fluids. Our Oh Soo-young found this report with her smartphone.
It takes just a drop of blood to find out whether you have Alzheimer's disease, even before you notice the symptoms. A revolutionary test kit developed by Korean scientists at Gyeongsang National University has made it possible to objectively diagnose cases of Alzheimer's at an early stage. In the past, doctors had to rely on radioactive imaging scans or cognitive tests based on symptoms of dementia, which only showed up after the condition had progressed to a certain extent. Now a sample of bodily fluid, including blood, saliva and sweat, can be used to test for the disease. The research team led by Kim Myung-ok used fluorescent nanoparticles to detect 8 microRNAs and 21 indicators associated with memory decline.
I chose to focus on Alzheimer's because it makes up at least 70% of dementia cases, but the reasons for developing the condition vary greatly depending on the individual's environment. So that is why we selected 21 indicators. Also, microRNAs can be easily found in blood, sweat, and saliva.
If key microRNAs or antigens linked to Alzheimer's are present, they show up in fluorescent colors.
When the fluorophore and quencher are close together, the quencher absorbs the energy or emission of light from the fluorophore. But if there is a relevant microRNA or antigen, the distance increases, so the quencher no longer suppresses the light.
This method is expected to increase the accuracy of early diagnosis.
When you attach a biotin protein, it enhances the color compared to previous tests, which were direct and gave off non-specific results, which largely affected the accuracy of the tests.
The findings have been published in scientific reports this month, and the test kit is already undergoing clinical tests to be commercialized later this year. Professor Kim hopes to further develop ways to detect and effectively treat dementia through customized precision medicine at an early stage. 오수영 Arirang News Chinju.
Seoul is hosting its annual Welcome Week for foreign tourists. Starting today, the capital is offering discounts with about 190 partner companies that include dining, shopping, accommodation, exhibitions, performances, and reservation services. To find out more, foreign tourists should visit SeoulWelcomeWeek.com. You can also download a hard copy of what's called the Seoul Welcome Week online card to get discounts both online and offline. The event runs through next Sunday. The Seoul city government is offering free guided tours of the old streets and neighborhoods along the stone wall that once protected the capital city. It's a great way to spend a cool autumn evening with family or friends, getting a bit of exercise and learning about Seoul's past. Won Jung-hwan reports.
Some 30 people wait patiently for the start of a free guided tour of the Seoul's ancient wall, also known as Hanyang Dosong. With specially chosen heritage experts, the tour takes participants under the autumn moonlight, down old roads, and through villages along the stone wall, which was built back in the Joseon dynasty.
The wall could be a bit steep, but those on the tour will be able to learn the history of the massive stone wall that once encircled the capital city.
As visitors walk along the wall, they get a chance to listen to how the wall, with an average height of 7 meters, protected Seoul from 1396 to 1910. While some parts of the fortifications were destroyed during Japan's colonial rule and the Korean War, visitors can still feel the wall's grandness. Following the ridges of Bugaksan, Naksan, Namsan, and Inangsan, the 4 main mountains surrounding the center of Seoul, the trails from the Joseon era provide a different view of the city.
I really enjoyed hearing stories from residents living near Hanyang Dosong. The tour program wasn't only about the history of the wall, but it also told us how the people in the area are now living together with the ancient wall.
I've been here a couple of times, but since I live in Incheon, it was always hard for me to come during the night. But through such an organized tour program, I was able to not only trek at night, but also learn about the history.
There are 2 more free tours offered by Seoul this year, taking place in the evenings of October 15th and 17th. Only 35 adults can take each tour, and spots are allocated on a first-come, first-served basis. You can apply via the city's reservation website from 10 a.m. on October 7th. Won Jung-hwan, Arirang News.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.